The Shores of Tripoli, America's First War on Terror, a story of principle, piracy, and the birth of the U.S. Navy. The hook, the price of freedom. Imagine this. The year is 1801. You are a sailor on an American merchant ship, a free citizen of a new republic, charting a course across the vast Mediterranean. Suddenly, a strange flag appears on the horizon, the emblem of a North African corsair. They seize your vessel, chain you, and drag you back to the infamous Barbary coast. Your crime? Being an American trading on the high seas. For decades, the nations of Europe had silently paid a humiliating tribute, essentially a bribe or protection money, to the Barbary states of Tripoli, Algiers, Tunis, and Morocco to protect their ships from this state-sponsored piracy. When the Barbary rulers demanded this same exorbitant tax from the newly independent United States, America's leaders faced a choice: pay the ransom or fight the world's first sustained war against international extortion. President Jonathan Jefferson, a man who famously feared the tyranny of debt, declared the young nation would not submit to blackmail. The refusal to pay led directly to the First Barbary War, 1801 to 1805, a conflict that defined American resolve and forged the legend of the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps. The spark of conflict. Paying for peace. After gaining independence, American ships lost the protection of the powerful British Royal Navy and instantly became soft targets in the Mediterranean. From the 1780s onward, Barbary corsairs seized dozens of ships and enslaved hundreds of American sailors, demanding massive ransoms that the fledgling nation could ill afford. The problem of tribute. By 1801, the U.S. had already spent millions, over 20% of its national budget in some years, paying tribute to the Barbary states. When Yusuf Karamanli, the Pasha of Tripoli, felt slighted by a smaller payment than those given to other Barbary rulers, he dramatically declared war on the United States on May 10, 1801, by ordering the flagpole of the U.S. consulate to be chopped down. Jefferson, a longtime opponent of the tribute policy, acted swiftly. Though he had previously sought to limit military spending, he asked Congress to authorize the dispatch of a naval squadron to the Mediterranean, with a firm mandate to protect American commerce and chastise their insolence. Early naval engagements and disaster. The war initially consisted of a series of naval blockades and skirmishes, with the U.S. Navy slowly finding its footing overseas. First blood. The first clear American victory came on August 1, 1801, when the USS Enterprise, captained by Lieutenant Andrew Sterrett, decisively defeated the much larger Tripolitan ship, the Tripoli. Although Sterrett could not legally take the ship as a prize, Congress hadn't issued a formal declaration of war yet. He disabled the enemy ship and humiliatingly sent it back to port. The loss of the Philadelphia, 1803. Disaster struck in October 1803. The magnificent 36-gun frigate USS Philadelphia, commanded by Captain William Bainbridge, ran aground on an uncharted reef while pursuing a corsair near Tripoli harbor. The ship was captured, and over 300 American sailors were taken prisoner. This was a massive blow, giving the Pasha one of America's best warships to use against its former owners. The defining acts of heroism, 1804. The capture of the Philadelphia catalyzed the most famous acts of the war, transforming a frustrating blockade into a legend. Decatur's audacious raid. In February 1804, Lieutenant Stephen Decatur, Jr., then only 25, led a small ketch, a captured vessel renamed Intrepid, back into the heavily defended Tripoli harbor under the cover of darkness. Posing as a distressed Maltese trading ship, Decatur and his men boarded the captured Philadelphia, quickly overwhelmed the Tripolitan crew, set the ship ablaze, and escaped under heavy enemy fire. This act of calculated bravery prevented the ship from ever being used against the U.S. and earned Decatur international acclaim. British Admiral Horatio Nelson called it the most bold and daring act of the age. III. Preble's bombardments, 1804. Throughout 1804, Commodore Edward Preble, commanding the American squadron, intensified the pressure. He initiated a series of relentless naval bombardments against the fortifications and the harbor of Tripoli, bringing the war directly to the Pasha's doorstep and sustaining the morale of the American prisoners. III. To the Shores of Tripoli, the Derna Campaign, 1805. The final, decisive campaign of the war was an unlikely overland march that secured the victory. III. The Overthrow Plot. William Eaton, the former U.S. consul to Tunis, developed a daring plan to depose the ruling Pasha, Yusuf Karamanli, and replace him with his exiled older brother, Hamid Karamanli, who was more favorable to American interests. III. The March to Derna, 1805. Eaton, Hamid, and a small ragtag force consisting of 8 U.S. Marines led by Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon, 500 Arab, Greek, and other mercenaries set out from Alexandria, Egypt. They endured a grueling 50-day, 500-mile march across the unforgiving Libyan desert. III. Victory at Derna, 1805. On April 27, 1805, the Expeditionary Force, aided by naval bombardment from U.S. ships offshore, successfully attacked and captured the port city of Derna, the first time in history the American flag was raised in victory on foreign soil. The U.S. Marines' action in this battle is the source of the famous line, "To the Shores of Tripoli," found in the Marine Corps hymn. V. Outcome and Legacy. The Treaty, June 5, 1805. Fearing the success of the Derna campaign and the ultimate takeover of Tripoli, Pasha Yusuf Karamanli quickly sought a peace treaty with the U.S. consul Tobias Lear. The treaty stipulated that the U.S. would pay a final $60,000 ransom for the immediate release of the Philadelphia crew. Crucially, however, the treaty ended the payment of annual tribute to Tripoli. A statement of sovereignty. The First Barbary War established the United States as a nation unwilling to yield to international extortion. It was the first foreign war fought by the U.S. and successfully projected American power across the Atlantic. It forced a reluctant Congress to recognize the vital need for a strong, standing Navy, ensuring that free trade and sailors' rights would become central tenets of American foreign policy for generations.
The Second Barbary War, the Algerian War, 1815. The final showdown, no more ransom. The interwar period and renewed hostility. The peace established with Tripoli in 1805 did not last, nor did it extend effectively to the other Barbary states, particularly Algiers. The War of 1812. With the United States engaged in a major conflict with Great Britain, 1812 to 1815, the majority of the U.S. Navy was tied up defending the home coast. This preoccupation left American merchant ships vulnerable in the Mediterranean once again. Algiers strikes. The Dey of Algiers, ruler, believing the American Navy to be permanently crippled after the war with Britain, publicly tore up the existing treaty. Algiers resumed seizing American ships, enslaving sailors, and demanding tribute, assuming the Americans would be forced to pay as they had done years before. A swift and decisive retaliation. As soon as the Treaty of Ghent ended the War of 1812, the newly battle-hardened U.S. Navy immediately turned its attention back to the Barbary Coast. President James Madison secured congressional authorization for war against Algiers, aiming to end the piracy problem permanently. Decatur's fleet. Two powerful American squadrons were assembled. The first, and most important, was commanded by Commodore Stephen Decatur, Jr., the hero of the USS Philadelphia burning, sailing from New York in May 1815. This fleet included some of the Navy's best ships. The Battle of Cape Gata, June 17, 1815. Decatur's squadron encountered the flagship of the Algerian fleet, the frigate Mashuda, off the coast of Spain. In a short, sharp engagement, the Americans completely overwhelmed the Algerians, capturing the ship and killing the famed Algerian admiral Reis Hamidou. The Battle of Cape Palos, June 19, 1815. Just 2 days later, the U.S. fleet captured another Algerian warship, sinking several gunboats in the process. These two quick naval victories effectively crippled Algiers' naval power. The end of tribute. With his navy destroyed and Decatur's powerful squadron blockading Algiers harbor, the Dey was forced to sue for peace. The Treaty of Algiers. Decatur dictated the terms of the treaty directly to the Dey, demanding the immediate release of all American prisoners without ransom. Most critically, the treaty explicitly stated that the United States would never again pay tribute or ransom money to Algiers. The Americans had effectively imposed a peace dictated solely by force. Diplomatic dominance. Decatur quickly sailed on to Tunis and Tripoli, forcing both states to accept similar treaties and pay indemnities for seizing American property during the War of 1812. Legacy of the Barbary Wars. The Second Barbary War marked the true and final end of the Barbary states' demands for tribute from the United States. Global impact. America's decisive action immediately influenced European powers, who soon followed suit by launching their own punitive strikes to end the practice completely. A symbol of power. The Barbary Wars, and especially the swift success of the 1815 campaign, secured the U.S. Navy's reputation and solidified its role as a global protector of American commerce and national dignity. The wars established a fundamental principle of American foreign policy, that the U.S. would use military force to defend the freedom of the seas and would not pay ransom to terrorists or pirates.